On behalf of the Duldig Studio and the University of Melbourne, I would like to welcome you to the 2021 Duldig Lecture on Sculpture. A warm welcome to regional, interstate and overseas attendees and to many of our former Annual Duldig Lecture speakers who have joined us today. My name is Georgina Walker. I'm an Honorary Research Fellow at the University of Melbourne and also teaching to the Master of Art Curatorship program. I've been working with the team at the Duldig Studio as a member of the board to deliver today's public lecture. I would like to acknowledge that I'm standing on the land of the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung peoples who have been custodians of the land on which I live and work, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and to the elders of the lands this presentation reaches. And to First Nations people participating in this event, we pay our respects to the elders past and present. We are honoured to welcome Melbourne-based artist, curator and researcher Maree Clarke, who is a Yorta Yorta, Wamba Wamba, Mutti Mutti, Boonwurrung woman. Inaugurated in 1986, the Annual Duldig Lecture on Sculpture commemorates the life and work of sculptor Karl Duldig and artist Slawa Horowitz-Duldig. The annual lecture was held at the National Gallery of Victoria until 2015, and in 2016 transitioned to the University of Melbourne under the stewardship of my very dear colleague and mentor, Associate Professor Alison Ingalls, AM. In light of Alison's upcoming retirement, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge her immense contributions to the university and museum sector that span more than 3 decades. Alison has coordinated the Master of Art Curatorship program over the last 27 years, was a member of the board at the Duldig Studio for 15 years, and prior to that, she was a trustee at the National Gallery of Victoria for 9 years. Her public spiritedness and willingness to share knowledge and expertise with students, colleagues, and industry partners has been endless, with many of us benefiting from her generosity. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Georgina.
The format of today's lecture is clearly set out. Following Maree's presentation, we will allow time for a brief Q&A. I would encourage you to add your questions to the chat feature, and we will endeavour to address as many questions as we can in the time that has been allocated. However, I apologise in advance if we are unable to respond to all questions, and I thank you for your understanding. Anthony de Young, founding board member and president of the Duldig Studio Board, will conclude today's event. I now have the great pleasure of introducing Miles Russell Cook, who will in turn introduce our guest speaker, Maree Clarke. Miles Russell Cook is Acting Senior Curator of Indigenous Art at the National Gallery of Victoria. Miles' passion is for First Nations contemporary art. He is jointly responsible for the National Gallery of Victoria's collection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art and the art of Oceania, pre-Hispanic America and Africa. Miles has both curated and co-curated a number of significant exhibitions at the National Gallery of Victoria, including Colony Frontier Wars in 2017, From Bark to Neon in 2019, Destiny 2020, and Maree Clarke Ancestral Memories 2021. We can advise that Maree's exhibition has now been extended to the 6th of February 2022. Miles derives much personal and professional influence and inspiration from his maternal Aboriginal heritage in Western Victoria, with connection into Tasmania and the Bass Strait Islands. Please welcome Miles Russell Cook.
Thank you so much, Georgina, for that introduction, and thank you for having us today. Likewise, before I pass over to Maree, I would also like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri country, where I live and work, and pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land and acknowledge all elders, and in particular anyone joining this virtual talk today. So as Georgina said, I've been lucky enough to spend the last few years working with Maree on her current solo exhibition at NGV Australia called Maree Clarke, Ancestral Memories. And also, as Georgina mentioned, I just wanted to kind of introduce a little bit about Maree. So Maree is, as you would all know, a superstar artist, as well as a Yorta Yorta, Wamba Wamba, Mutti Mutti and Boonwurrung woman. And this is her first major retrospective, and it's also the first time that there has ever been a solo show of any artist or designer at NGV who is ancestrally connected to the lands on which the gallery is built, which is a really huge thing, and I sort of can't overstate how important this exhibition is, and yeah, how thrilled we are that it's been extended. So Maree has been a pivotal figure in the reclamation of Southeast Australian Aboriginal art and cultural practices for many, many years. And her work reflects this personal continuing desire to reconnect with the cultural heritage, with her own cultural heritage, highlighting a really deep engagement that she has with and a reverence for the customary ceremonies, rituals, objects and languages of her ancestors. So the exhibition is on level 3 at NGV Australia, and when you enter, you'll encounter over 30 years worth of work that traverses a truly multidisciplinary practice. Maree is known for her love of materiality, and so there is a wonderful range of works within the show as well, including things like photography, lenticular, sculpture, glass, video, jewellery, possum skin cloaks, and more. So some highlights in the show include a body of rarely displayed black and white photographs from the 1990s, a timeline of Maree's jewellery making from I think the late 80s right through to her most critically acclaimed work of just the last few years, using 3D printed kangaroo teeth in gold and resin, and as well as glass. And then there's also a number of her most accomplished and ambitious large-scale contemporary installations, including the 2 glass eel traps, Ancestral Memory, her 84 photographic portrait series, Ritual and Ceremony, and a stunning suspended forest of sticks at the end of the exhibition as well, titled Me in Mourning. So Maree's work can be seen both inside the gallery and also outside the gallery. As I said, it's on level 3 at NGV Australia, and when we are open again, we hope to welcome you in. But it's also currently projected onto the facade of NGV Australia as well, so visible from Russell Street in the evenings. So I do encourage you, even during this lockdown, to go and have a look as well. As Georgina mentioned, the show has been extended to the 6th of February, so hopefully we'll be able to welcome you soon. And I should also mention there's a wonderful catalogue that's available to purchase through the NGV Design Store. So it's now my absolute pleasure to introduce Maree for today's talk, to do a deep dive into this spectacular artist and this wonderful practice. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you now, Maree.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Miles, and thanks, Georgina, for inviting me to speak today. And so good to see so many people online sort of joining in. So what I thought I would do today is to share with you all basically my 30 plus years of making, creating, and continuing cultural practice into the 21st century. Basically, over the last, 30 odd years, I've been making, creating, and sharing the cultural knowledge that I've learnt from my research into collections, not only in Australia, but around the world. And all of my work is connected back to country, culture, place, and family. And basically, I'm telling stories of my family, my connection to country, and somehow sort of, sharing the stories that were passed to me or my experiences. But basically, I started off as a jewellery maker in Mildura in the late 80s, and working with my brother, Peter Clarke, and sister-in-law, Sonia Hodge, would make these beautiful timber brooches, earrings, echidna quills, collecting quandong seeds, bottle brush, black wattle seeds from country and creating this beautiful sort of jewellery collection, one of which I think the Koori Heritage Trust at Federation Square have quite a collection of our early work. And so then going from that to painting the first green and gold tram to hit the tracks of Melbourne. And after painting this tram, I basically went back to Mildura, packed up my little flat, moved back to Melbourne, and have been working as an artist ever since, and started moving into curating and doing major public artworks. But not after I sort of ended up working with Viva Gibb, who trained Kim Kruger and I as photographers in the early 90s. And basically we went to lots of different Aboriginal communities in Melbourne. And you will see in my solo show a selection of documentary photographs that I'd taken in the early 90s. And the Picture Me Koori poster on the left-hand side is an image of Kim Kruger, Destiny Deacon, myself, and the late Lisa Belair. And that was our first collective exhibition together, held at Melbourne Fringe. And then Kim and I went on to do sort of a few other exhibitions together. And then from there, I ended up setting up at the City of Port Phillip, but the then City of St Kilda City Council, the first Koori Arts unit that any local government had. And I ended up working with Kimber Thompson, Len Tregonning and Maree Moffat, and we set up the Koori Arts unit and basically got a 3-ton truck, went to every Aboriginal community in Victoria collecting artworks, and created the first visual arts festival here in Melbourne. And that was sort of mid to late 90s. And we had 5 exhibitions here in Melbourne, including an incredible concert at the Great Hall at the National Gallery of Victoria. And then went on to create an education kit called Can't See for Lookin', which was 12 Koori women artists educating. And basically all throughout sort of the early days until now is trying to put Victorian Aboriginal art on the map, because I feel like, and a few other people feel like, you know, we are still invisible down here. And then going from that to working at the Koori Heritage Trust as senior curator of exhibitions and working with artists from around the state, but also Shannon Forkhead, who was then the CEO at the Koori Heritage Trust, and Jim Berg, founder of the Koori Heritage Trust, wrote the book called Power and Passion, and wanted to use my ritual and ceremony series of the Women in Mourning throughout the book. And it talks about the return of the skeletal remains that were taken from the Murray-Darling rivers and sent back to country. And then on the right is a book that you can download off the internet called Sort of Like Reading a Map with Fran Edmonds. And that talks about the Victorian Aboriginal art movement. And then this is one of my earlier public art commissions that I did with Len Tregonning. And basically we made, I think, 12 or 15 huge serpents out of railway sleepers into 40 metres of footpath over at Gardner's Creek Reserve. And yeah, it talks about connection to country, culture, place and family. And then Kimber Thompson also sort of, I think it was early 2000s, created this project called Scar, A Stolen Vision. and selected 6 to 7 artists, and we each got these big pier poles that we could put our mark on to create whatever scar and vision we liked. So I wanted to talk about the stolen generations, and within this whole exhibition of these huge, I think there ended up being like 30, 35 poles that were then installed into the old city square on Swanson Street, and there were soundscapes that went along with this. But this is now down along Enterprise Park near the aquarium. And then some more huge sculptural works, public art commissions that I've worked on with Jeff Neal, Vicky Cousins and Megan Vandenberg. And the top left talks about when it's a big kangaroo apple with a Murnong daisy on it. And that talks about the return of the eels when they go up Cannanook Creek. And women would weave a net of daisy chains out of the Murnong daisy, and the kangaroo apple would be out, and people would have a big gathering, big corroboree down on the beach, sort of celebrating the return of the eels. And then on the right-hand side is a clump of frog eggs out of 3 mil thick spun stainless steel. And that talks about the growling grassland frog, which is an endangered species of frog. And then the bottom left is a huge, I think it's about 9 meters, 20 mil thick stainless steel feather. Talks about Bunjil flying over the land. The feather falls from his chest, blesses the land and creates these beautiful habitats for the animals to come back. It's a close-up of the kangaroo apple, which is actually in bronze. And that's a feather, and with me standing next to it, you get a sense of the scale. And then this is a piece called Born of the Land that was at Substation a couple of years ago. Kimber Thompson curated the exhibition called Ticking All the Boxes. And for this particular piece, I wanted to be, buried under all this dirt. I actually wanted to make this out on country, but time didn't permit. So we shot it in a studio, and I was buried under like 300 kilos of dirt, and I'm rising up out of the ground. And I've made a second iteration of this work that's in my solo exhibition with all of my nieces and nephews, the youngest being 6 years old, with a sprinkling of dirt over him and his little cousins, sort of all coming up out of the ground. And it's basically born of the land. This is part of the research that I do in museum collections around the world. This is at the Natural History Museum in Florence, in Tuscany. And basically they have all of these beautiful artifacts just, clumped into a glass case with a number on it, which you then have to go and sort of research and find out what that number is connected to, or what community, what country. And I'm now able to identify Southeast Australian Aboriginal objects and items held in these museum collections. And they also have a beautiful collection of river reed necklaces and things, different objects in this glass case, which is quite incredible. And I've been into lots of museums all over the world, and to try and take these designs and then give them back to the community and country that they're from is quite an incredible thing to do, because not everybody has the opportunity to sort of travel to these incredible museums. This is objects from the British Museum. Again, everything is from the southeast of Australia and mainly Victoria. And I'm holding a kangaroo tooth necklace using all of the teeth of a kangaroo. And then I'm also holding a possum pelt that doesn't have any sort of holes around the edges, so it tells us it's not connected to any possum skin cloak. And yeah, we still need to do more research into that little item. And then there's a emu feather skirt bottom left, and then 2 beautiful carved shields. This one is Saffron Walden, sort of north of London. And to me, it's almost like time has stood still. So one day, sort of, you know, into the future, well, I would like to organise a project where we take elders and younger people to go and visit these cultural items and give them a community and a voice and stories and connect them back to country, because we are the oldest living continuous culture in the world. But in some of these museums overseas, it's almost like time has stood still and we haven't moved anywhere. And then these images were my inspiration to make the kangaroo tooth necklace. And I've also done a lot of work with Sabra Torner from Mount Holyoke University at Massachusetts. And she's done a lot of research around the photographs, and the guy wearing the grass skirt actually has a pair of trousers on underneath that. And everything that these people are wearing and holding actually belonged to the photographer that was taking the photos. And that kangaroo tooth necklace is now held at the at a museum, at the Edinburgh Museum in Scotland. Kangaroo tooth necklaces and objects that are held at the Oxford University at Pitt Rivers Museum. And the bottom left with the kangaroo tooth engraving tool and the pelvis bone scraper were not held in any museum collection here in Australia. And Len Tregonning ended up recreating those objects, and I think they're now held in the Koori Heritage Trust collection. But the 2 kangaroo tooth necklaces are also from the southeast. And then basically this is me out on country collecting the jaws and the teeth of the kangaroo for my beautiful kangaroo tooth necklaces. And basically I take photographs of every object and item that I ever use in any of my work, and I try and take them in situ before they're taken. And I've probably got one of, you know, the largest collections of photographs of, you know, skeletal remains, the jaws in situ, and hope to one day make a book on the making of a kangaroo tooth necklace. And considering the kangaroo only has those 2 bottom incisor teeth that I can use for these beautiful big necklaces is pretty incredible when you consider and multiply that by the amount of teeth that I need for the necklaces. And I also try and take my family out on country as often as I can to collect these objects and items. And the whole process of collecting, getting them home, preparing them, Nicholas, my husband, taking the sinew out of the tail of the kangaroo, preparing the kangaroo leather, to put all of these bits and pieces together is pretty incredible. And this is Len with the largest kangaroo tooth necklace to date, with 123 teeth, which is also in my exhibition at the National Gallery. And then I think about 3 years ago, as part of Design Week at the National Gallery, I worked on a project with Miles and Simone Leamon to create a new jewellery collection for Design Week. And we wanted to do like 18-karat gold-plated kangaroo teeth, the 3D printed kangaroo teeth, echidna quills, and crow feathers. And I had the first kangaroo tooth necklace that Len and I ever made with 27 teeth in that space. And basically it's a continuation of cultural practice you know, that hadn't been practiced for a long, long time. And just to be able to revive this and now move it into the 21st century is pretty incredible. And all of my practice is about passing that knowledge and skill on to my family. And this necklace, I taught my nieces and nephews how to bind the sinew. My husband taught the kids how to take the sinew out of the tail of a kangaroo. And then I had one 18-karat gold-plated kangaroo tooth left that I gave the kids to put into this necklace. And this is also in the exhibition, but they did a fantastic job of making this necklace. And then again, working with Canberra Glassworks, and this was for Vogue's 60th anniversary edition. And I got Canberra Glassworks to fabricate for me some crystal glass kangaroo teeth, and using one organic tooth in the necklace. And then this is a glass crystal, black glass crystal kangaroo tooth necklace. And again, getting my family to help me put these objects, pardon me, objects together is just the most amazing thing to do, and to watch these kids sort of create these things is just the most beautiful thing. And this was part of the Design Week collection at the National Gallery. So I think I designed about 12, 13 body adornments for Design Week. And these are the 3D printed supersize, which is basically 3 times the size of a kangaroo tooth and echidna quill. And then going from that to the river reed necklace, which was given to people passing through country as a sign of safe passage and friendship. And I made the first iteration of these necklaces in about 2014, I think, and for North, South, East and West exhibition. And the first series, and I continue to make them, of 50-metre river reed necklaces that I collect from down along the Maribyrnong River in Footscray. But all of the feathers that I use, I collect from, basically roadkill, and then prepare them and sort them. And then I wanted to photograph my necklace, my nephew, in this 10-metre plain river reed necklace for the Nationals up in Sydney. And then this one I think is in my exhibition at the NGV, and Magnolia wearing the 50-metre river reed necklace with parrot feathers. And then getting Canberra Glassworks to fabricate my river reeds in glass, also with the little knots and kinks in them. But I also got them to fabricate these clear glass seed pods, which I call a moment in time. And I've collected ochre and feathers, and have also put those into these glass seed pods. And this one is also in my exhibition with cockatoo feathers and with clear glass seed pods. And then going from that to the Ritual and Ceremony series in 2010, I was invited to be part of an exhibition around life, death and spirituality. And I didn't know anything about my own traditional mourning practices. And somebody introduced me to William Blandowski's book. And he documented Aboriginal life along the Murray-Darling rivers. And the top right-hand corner is a Kopi mourning cap that is held at the British Museum, that was taken by George Murray Black who had also taken all of the skeletal remains from along the Murray-Darling rivers from burial sites and had taken them to Melbourne University, and the Melbourne Museum tried to take the skeletal remains to New York for exhibition, and they got an injunction to get all of those skeletal remains returned back to country. But all of the Kopi mourning caps are still held in museums, not only in Australia, but around the world. But there were these huts that were built for the women to sit in and wail, and wearing these caps on their head to represent the mourning and the weight of your grief. And they weighed up to 7 kilos, and you would wear it, you know, from 2 weeks to 6 months, or until that fell off your head. And after that mourning period, you were free to move on. And I've since made these Kopi with, you know, a number of men and women, and these are some of the historical Kopi mourning caps held in the museum collection at Melbourne University. And South Australia also have like quite a few hundred. Melbourne Museum hold 85. And from all of that research, I ended up creating this exhibition with 38 Aboriginal women representing the 38 tribes of Victoria, all wearing the mourning marking. All of the sticks are from country where this practice is from, that I collected with my brother, on a bed of red dirt, which is also represents country, with all of the Kopi mourning caps from the 38 women. And then I got their stories of loss, sorrow and mourning, and had it scrolling on the ground in front of the exhibition. So it was almost like you were enveloped in this space. And it was quite an emotional piece. And I've since sort of created lots of different iterations of this work and shown it in so many different ways, in different galleries and, you know, museums around the world. And then I was lucky enough to work with, I think it was around 45 Aboriginal men. And this particular shot is the ritual and ceremony held by the National Gallery of Victoria, who loaned it for my solo exhibition back up in Mildura. And again, the sticks that my nephew collected, 500 sticks from country to represent those huts that were built for women to sit in and mourn. And then this was part of the exhibition at the Melbourne Museum, where I took this photograph up near Lake Victoria, just up into New South Wales, which is one of the largest concentrated Aboriginal sites in Australia. And at Lake Victoria, there's a huge burial ground with, you know, lots of skeletal remains. And that water from Lake Victoria runs into the Rufus River. And there you have the Rufus River Massacre. So I wanted to take this photograph of this beautiful landscape and superimpose these people into the landscape as ghosted figures, because you can absolutely feel this energy when you're up there on country. And I ended up designing 7 T-shirts to represent the scars that men would have worn during ritual and ceremony and mourning. Another shot from the Melbourne Museum. And then as often as I can, I include my family. So my older nieces and nephews taught all of these younger nieces and nephews in one afternoon the dances that they'd been dancing since they were little tackers for the opening of my exhibition at the Melbourne Museum. So most of them travelled down from Mildura. And then I thought I might like to try my hand at creating a photographic hologram. And I didn't know sort of technically how to do that. So I basically flew to Adelaide, had a 3-hour meeting in the airport with a physicist, flew back to Melbourne, got funding, he came over, and I think we had like a 17-hour day at Footscray Community Arts Centre in the theatre, and created this set design to represent my grandmother's lounge room pre-1967, and had to basically shoot 1,500 frames, send those images off to Lithuania, got sent back a huge piece of black acrylic, and it wasn't until you shone a light onto it in a particular way that the whole thing came to life. And it was almost like you could step back into my grandmother's lounge room. And this was for Defying Empire at the National Museum, National Gallery of Australia in Canberra. And then after that, I thought, oh, I'd like to try my hand at 3D photographs. And Monash University commissioned me to make a work for the Matheson Library. And after walking through 4 or 5 floors of the building that they were renovating, it wasn't until we got down to the ground floor and saw this wall that was still like a work in progress with, you know, sheets of plasterboard leaning up against it, but it was absolutely the right space and place for this work. And if you turned around from there, you see this beautiful big tree out in the courtyard. And this work talks about when my family and I lived in a tent in down behind the mission in Balranald, and my bed was a suitcase. And this is the sensation you get when you walk past this work. And then this is the next iteration of that work with my thumbprint over top, which is basically embedded in country and, you know, the trees, the sky, the earth, which changes it totally. And then I was invited to have an exhibition or be part of an exhibition at Mission to Seafarers a couple of years ago. And I thought, oh, you know, I would love to make a river reed canoe, which talks about our connection back to Tasmania through Manalagenna. And so my husband and some friends sort of made this river reed canoe in my backyard. I got my nieces and nephews together one evening or one afternoon. We basically went down to Altona Beach, and I painted the kids up in the car park. The boys carried the canoe down to the water's edge, and they were all sitting like this when a woman walked by, and she thought she was stepping back in time. And this particular piece is in my solo show, but it's also in Reversible Destiny at the Photographic Art Museum in Tokyo, curated by Natalie King. And then maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I worked on this other project, also at Footscray Arts Centre with the Science Gallery from Melbourne University, on a 10-metre river reed eel trap. So all of these materials collected from country, and they wanted a lead artist to work with an emerging artist. And my nephew, Mitch Marnie, had sort of not long moved to town, and he's a brilliant artist. So I asked him if he would like to work on this gig with me. And basically we had to go down to the Maribyrnong, collect all these river reeds, work out a system to create these huge sort of big rings to put this whole eel trap together. And it was quite incredible. And I think we worked there for maybe 2 to 3 months. And Mitch worked with hundreds of school kids. I think all up we worked with about 300 people over the time that we were there. And that was every weekend and, you know, every other weekday, and made this 10-metre river reed eel trap that we then put into the water And I think remnants of it are still there today because it's all biodegradable materials made from stringy bark, river reeds, and beautiful woven objects by Vic Morphy and Donna Blackall. And then in 2006, I worked with Vicky Cousins, Lee Darrick and Trina Ham to take back to community possum skin cloak making that hadn't been made back in community for over 200 years. And to be able to take back to community this skill and practice was quite incredible, because in the southeast of Australia, everybody would have had a possum skin cloak. And this is the Hunter Valley possum skin cloak that's held in one of the museums in Berlin. And basically they've unpicked it, sewn it to a piece of material and keep it in this, you know, special cupboard, because it almost looks like parchment paper that if you touch it, it will disintegrate. It is so fragile. And to be able to give these designs back to community is just incredible. And so Vicky, Lee, Trina and I, after working with the 4 different groups within Victoria, ended up working with 35 of the 38 language groups to make the possum skin cloaks for the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games in 2006. And these cloaks now today are being used back in communities for baby naming days, ceremony, graduations. And then Len and I were working on a project out at Werribee, and Rosalie Fable sort of came out and wanted Len and I to go to Canada to work with First Nations mob on a possum skin cloak and a buffalo skin robe. And the mob in Canada had never marked a buffalo skin robe before, but we all came together, and Len had unfortunately passed, but I ended up taking my family and Vicky West along with me, and we ended up making these 2 beautiful sort of cloaks and robes. And Barry Ace, one of the First Nation artists that we worked with, taught us beading, and you know, he's just the most incredible beader. And this exhibition is currently on, and unfortunately for COVID, we can't see it, but and hopefully restrictions will lift and you'll be able to see it later in September. But these are on exhibition at the Footscray Community Arts Centre, along with all of these portraits of us wrapped in both the possum and buffalo skins. And then I forgot to mention before that there are only 6 historical cloaks left in the world. And in my family, we've started making possum skin cloaks for burial. I had a brother pass away a couple of years ago, and we made a cloak for him to use before he passed. And I had a possum skin cloak made for Len's 60th birthday. And when he passed, I had family and friends come around, we marked the cloak, and then I went into the funeral home and wrapped him in it. And because he had such a special relationship with the Melbourne Museum, we asked if we could have his ceremony there. And the Melbourne Museum had never had like this contemporary ceremony of sending somebody back to country. But I asked the 5 elders of the 5 clans of the Kulin Nation if they would do a smoking ceremony, which they did. And it was just the most incredible thing to be able to do this and send Len back to Gunai country. And that's his cloak we wrapped him in. It was quite incredible. And then we move into Ancestral Memories, my exhibition at the National Gallery of Victoria. And to be the first living artist with ancestral ties to the land where the National Gallery is held is like pretty incredible. And so when you walk in, this is the first thing that you will see. Pardon me. And on the left-hand side are my documentary photographs from the early 90s, mid-90s or something. And then all of my sort of nieces, nephews and family continue throughout the whole exhibition like a spine throughout the show. And in this 10-metre vitrine is my jewellery making collection from the early 80s, or late 80s, sorry, until like pretty much now. And the kangaroo tooth necklace on the left is borrowed from the Melbourne Museum, and that's one of the necklaces that Len and I made with the 75 teeth. So you can imagine how many kangaroo teeth or kangaroos that took to make that necklace. And then the 50-metre river reed necklaces. And I was also, pardon me, commissioned to make this possum skin cloak. Today we generally make cloaks with around 30, 35 pelts. This one has 63 and it's quite large, and I've mapped all the countries that I'm connected to. And the two top left is Tipperary in Ireland with green ochre, and Dunstable in the UK also with green ochre. And that ochre I've been holding on for, pardon me, roughly about 10 years, 10, 11 years. And finally, I've got to use it on this beautiful cloak. And then it's also sitting in front of the Yorta Yorta cloak, which is also borrowed from the Melbourne Museum. And I just love how my reflection of my cloak sort of fills in the gaps in the cloak. It's quite fantastic. One of my installations of mourning at in the exhibition with my 500 sticks. And this is sort of one of two eel traps, glass eel traps that Canberra Glassworks fabricated for me. This is the second one, which to me is very masculine. The glass seems a little bit thicker, and yeah, it's just a very powerful thing. And then the one on the bottom is the more female sort of curvy, a lighter glass sort of eel trap. And it's the first time they've been shown together. This is from the old quad at Melbourne University, where I was the first artist after refurbishing the space. Had invited me to make an artwork and curate an exhibition. And I decided on the glass eel trap made in 20 sections, because next to the old quad was a lake, and they had drained the lake, built a building and sort of piped all the water out of the lake after they'd built the building. But the eels still come back to that place today, which is why I called it Ancestral Memory. And I basically flew to Canberra with my little round piece of plastic and a sketch of an eel trap, and asked them to make it proportionally right up to 3 meters in 20 clear sections of glass. It's just the most beautiful thing. And pretty much that's it. And this is my family out on country collecting kangaroo teeth. And Bunjil, our protector. Yeah. So thanks for listening. But all of my work is around, learning all of those different pieces of practice and processes. And to me, the process is just as important as the end product, because there are so many things that you go through to make that object an item, that to be able to share that information and everything with my family is just, you know, to me is the most incredible thing. And I live, eat and breathe this every single day.
Thank you for sharing those very interesting projects that you've undertaken over the last 30 odd years, and the many collaborations that you've been able to sort of integrate within your own practice. I would like to now take this opportunity to open up this part of the lecture to our audience and ask for some questions. I can see that we've already received some of the questions. So Maree, if you don't mind, I might just read some of the questions. The first question is from Penelope, and she says, "Hi Maree, thank you for an insightful lecture about your incredible work. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the repatriation of Aboriginal cultural objects sleeping in collections in Australia and around the world? Is there value in the objects staying where they are, particularly if they can be activated by story and connection, as you mentioned?"
Well, I know sort of in my lifetime, not all of these objects and items will go back to community. And I think the community, it would be great if they had a space that could house those collections, because everything needs to be sort of temperature controlled. And I know Melbourne Museum are repatriating some objects and items to different communities around Victoria, and that's great. But I think the community also have to have the capacity to be able to look after those objects and items. And I think with the Yullinge committee that Melbourne Museum have with, you know, different communities all over Victoria who advise on what's happening and how it works and operates and what's exhibited and what's not, and sacred items, and you know, who can see particular things. I think it needs to be a dialogue between the community and the institution that's holding that object. But for myself, for those objects that are held overseas, the sacred objects and the ancestral remains for sure need to come back. But all of the other objects and items, I don't see returning in my lifetime. It won't happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Brian also wants to know why you've used 500 sticks and branches in the morning installation at the National Gallery of Victoria. Why 500?
Oh, because for me, it's like when you supersize things, it's like the wow factor. And I needed to create this space that would have a presence in the gallery. And if I had 50 sticks, it would be 50 sticks, and you wouldn't be able to, you know, it wouldn't have the impact that those 500 sticks have. And my nephew had spent about a week up in Mildura, going up past Lake Victoria, collecting those sticks from a friend's property, driving back into Mildura, driving a little ute that had no air conditioning in 45-degree heat up there, and delivered them to my sister's house, which I took over her front garden. And eventually they came down sort of for the exhibition. But yeah, I just thought that would be a great size to sort of hold everything together and have that installation in the centre, throw that projection. Yeah, it's a beautiful piece.
It certainly is. I have a comment from Charlotte. She said, it's not a question, but just to say that every time I hear Maree speak, I learn more. Most wonderful and powerful creative practice. It has had such reach here and globally, and involved so many not to be missed exhibition at the NGV. So a little bit of a plug for Miles' exhibition at the NGV. So thank you, Charlotte, for your collaborative nature. Thank you so much for the generously sharing your creative journey and wonderful work. And I think Charlotte speaks for all of us, Maree. So we owe you a great debt of gratitude for sharing that information. I think we're all better for hearing all that and learning more and more. So fantastic. Thank you, Charlotte. And Helen sort of asks about the cloaks. When are they worn with when are they worn with fur close to your skin, and when the other way around? Thank you, Maree.
Well, because they are like one of the warmest furs in the world, they have hollow fibres. In winter, even when I'm sewing a cloak at home, and if I've got 3 pelts on my legs, as you're sewing, they are so warm. So obviously in the winter, you would have the fur next to you. And in the summer, you would be sort of laying on the other side because, my God, they are so warm. Yeah.
And still staying on the possum skins, Heather asked a question, as possum skins are now protected species in Victoria, I'm wondering where the possum skins for the cloaks are sourced.
So we source our possum pelts from New Zealand because every Australian native animal is protected. So we source our pelts from New Zealand, where there are something like 70 million eating their forests. And they have a whole group of hunters that go out and hunt and trap and prepare the skins that we then have to buy back to practice our cultural practice in the 21st century.
Terrific. Sorry, Miles. Sorry.
In that there are like all of those communities that Vicky Lee, Trina and I worked with, all of those communities are now using possum skin cloak back in their communities for baby naming days, for graduations, for funerals, and different ceremonies that they might be doing or having, or smoking ceremonies where a cloak is needed for that. And I also worked with the 5 clans of the Kulin Nation at the start of the Tanderums that started a few years ago in at Federation Square. And I worked with the 5 clans to make their possum skin cloak for ceremony in that space and place. And then it's up to the community how they use that cloak and what stories are told on the possum skin cloaks.
Fantastic. Miles, did you want to say something? For some reason I thought, did you want to add anything?
No, I didn't say anything, but we are really thrilled to have just acquired that wonderful cloak by Maree with 63 pelts into the collection. So it's a spectacular object that you can see in the exhibition, but you will also have opportunities to see now that it's in the permanent collection going into the future.
Yeah.
That's splendid news. Fantastic. I have another question for you, Maree. They're sort of coming fast and furious at the moment. So one of the questions I have, Maree, if you get the chance, can you please explain more about the sort of correlation between gender and the designs of eel traps? Are there different designs of eel traps for men and women?
Not that I know of. And the makers of eel traps, like in the early days, as far as I've seen, or there's Yvonne Cormetry from South Australia, Auntie Connie Hart, who was one of our master weavers in Victoria. But we now have, people like Donna Blackall, Bronwyn Razum from Ballarat, like all of these different people, majority women, making the eel traps. The eel trap that Mitch and I made is obviously a stylised eel trap, which was for an art project between Melbourne University or Science Gallery and Footscray Community Arts Centre. And it was sort of almost like this commission piece for disposable around sustainability. And because we were using river reeds from country, everything was biodegradable, but including the eel traps that were made out of the different grasses are all biodegradable materials. So nothing was, you know, harmed, it wouldn't harm the environment and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I don't know any reference between men making eel traps and women making eel traps. I don't know. I've never heard of it.
Thank you. Linda wants to know, and she says, thank you for an excellent presentation. Early in the talk, Maree, you mentioned a sense of ongoing invisibility for First Nation artists. You mentioned down here, and I quote, and Linda wants to know, did you mean Victoria?
The southeast of Australia, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I would say Victoria, Tasmania, the East Coast, because basically, you know, if somebody asks me what I do and I say I'm an artist, and their immediate reaction is, oh, you do dot paintings. I don't even paint. I really barely paint now. And people's perception, I think, is for Papunya, Chula, Central Desert or top end. Like we barely even get a thought, really. But the work that people like Miles are doing, and, you know, if you come to Vivian Anderson Gallery or go to the Melbourne Museum, you will see this whole wealth of, you know, Southeast Australian Aboriginal art being made and practiced in the 21st century.
Fantastic. And I've got another question from Maree. Thank you. Sorry, from Maree to Maree. Pamela, thank you, Maree. Extraordinary work you've produced over your lifetime. Did anyone recognise your artistic potential when you were young?
Well, you know, I was one of those sort of kids from the country, and I was always the blackest kid in the school and would get teased, you know, and all the terrible names being said. So I didn't go that often. And so dropped out of school, haven't been to art school, everything is self-taught. And if I don't know, I will find the expert like Phil from Adelaide, who's a physicist, to help me make my photographic hologram or whatever it is that I need to make. And, you know, Jeff Neal from Artery Co-op, who is my artistic collaborator on the 5 new metro stations that are being built. And that man is just incredible with his wealth of knowledge of materials and how he fabricates things like the frog eggs and the bunjil's feather and the kangaroo apple. If he can't fabricate it himself, he knows the people that know how to tell your story. So basically it's always around trying to tell your story through art in a new way. And that's what I'm always trying to think about. What is the next story I'm going to tell and how am I going to tell it? I never really like to do the same thing twice. But I could use that same medium but tell a different story. Yeah.
I think that was clearly set out in your presentation, Maree, the way you sort of map out the sort of the journey of your artistic practice over time and the sort of constant development of that. Virginia, you've been most patient. I thank you for putting your hand up. Did you have a question?
Hi, Maree. Virginia Gorton here.
Hey, Virginia. How are you, lovey?
Very good. That was just thrilling. Thank you so much. I was wondering if you could just very briefly mention some of the future projects, particularly your the underground railway work, if you're able to.
Yeah, well, I've got my big presentation coming up this Thursday for that, actually, Virginia. So, and because everything is sort of running a little bit behind time because of COVID, and this should have been ticked off a little while ago, but doing the final presentation for stage 1 of the 5 new metro stations. So I'm the line-wide artist that is working across all 5 stations from platform up to concourse, and working with my artistic collaborator, Jeff Neal from Artery Co-op. Yeah, so basically I'm wanting to tell story of country and community and connection to country through those stations. But I can't say too much.
Just want to secrecy.
But yeah, there's like probably 10 other projects sort of ticking away over here that I'm always working on. And, you know, just yesterday I just went and hired a ute to go down the river and collect another bundle of river reeds for the next, you know, lot of necklaces, and the next jewellery collection I'm making with Blanche Tilden. And yeah, there's always something going on. There's always kangaroo teeth or jaws or something boiling up in my backyard, or, you know, river reeds to be cut and dyed and drilled and glued and threaded.
But feel free to share your secrets with us, Maree. There are only 150 of your close friends here.
Well, I could get that knocked over really quickly if you all came and helped. No.
I have a question from Sarah, one of my students. So, hello, Maree. Thank you for your great talk. I'm wondering what you think about non-Aboriginal people wearing, for example, the kangaroo teeth necklaces. Would it be better for non-Aboriginal people to wear the 3D printed or glass ones instead of the real kangaroo teeth necklaces, or does it not really matter?
Well, I really can't see anybody wearing a 75 tooth kangaroo tooth necklace out there. I don't even do that myself. But I made that new jewellery collection for people to wear and experience. And we're talking about 3D printed. It might have one kangaroo tooth on there, that like, and basically I have to go out on country. And my husband did this, you know, before the last lockdown, spent 3 days on the road, stopping at every dead kangaroo and pulling their teeth out. And if anybody can do that and then know the process of preparing that tooth, then you have to get your kangaroo tail and pull the sinew out and prepare your leather. It is quite a process. And I have myself and my little team of people that help me pull all of these together. And look, I make jewellery. I've been a jewellery maker for, you know, over 30 years. And you wear it so people can sort of experience and enjoy it.
Thank you. Also, David Goff sends a quick message of thanks. So I wanted to pass that on. And I might go on to one of the other questions that I have here. Maree, thank you so much. It's from Judy. I have learned so much and have enjoyed the aesthetics of your wonderful works. Hopefully we'll get to see them soon. So I think there's this great anticipation of audiences to be able to venture into the National Gallery of Victoria. And also, Melinda, one of our colleagues at the Duldig Studio, absolutely stunning exhibition, sobering and thoughtful, makes culture real and full of power. The space of the rooms used beautifully as well. And don't think I have, okay, and then I might conclude with this one from Lena, who says, "Hi Maree, so wonderful to hear your talk. Congratulations. I'm looking forward to the exhibition." I think another enthusiastic person who wants to visit the NGV. Before we sort of conclude our Q&A, I do have a question that I would like to direct to Miles. Thank you, Maree, that was terrific. Miles, I would like to sort of direct my final question to you, if I may, and that is that Maree Clarke's exhibition includes important lines, as Maree has outlined, from Museums Victoria, more specifically the possum skin cloak that dates back to 1853, and the historic Kopi morning cap that sit alongside Maree's contemporary works within the space at the National Gallery of Victoria. Such considerations are immensely powerful, not just from Maree's perspective, but also from the perspective of contemporary audiences. So my question is, could you please share a couple of the sort of the key highlights from the exhibition and your curatorial collaboration with Maree, who is both artist and curator?
Well, I think that the kind of collaboration, working with an artist who is both a curator and an artist, can go one of two ways. It can either be a disaster or absolute joy, and it was an absolute joy. So Maree and I, I would say, co-conceived the entire concept for the show. And really the inclusion of the historical material is about giving context to the customary forms that Maree is working with, but also about showing that when these objects go into a museum collection, they don't just go into a vacuum and fall asleep. There are still people who can speak for them, and there are still people who can make them, and that the object is reactivated through sort of physical presence and through research and through people like Maree. For me personally, the sort of key highlights within the show itself, I mean, the show is so much work that I love, but for me, I guess the big highlight is really, it's the book, where you get that incredible context, and there's some spectacular essays in there by, there's a beautiful essay by Charlotte Day, by Judith Ryan, by Hannah Presley, by Claire Coleman, really, really important authors who have given deeply thoughtful consideration to Maree's work. And I think that's in a lot of ways the legacy for the show, and that's certainly the highlight for me. So please do get a copy. You won't be disappointed. I don't know, Maree, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, it was just like pretty incredible to work on that scale, like in that space. And remember, Miles, like I was offered that first space.
Yeah.
And I couldn't feel a flow. I'd been in there a few times. I sat in the space, and I couldn't visualize my work in that space. And I talked to Miles about it, about moving some walls so we could have a bit of a flow. And he said, "Oh, look, we'll work it out," and got me the other space, which I absolutely loved.
It's just perfect. I was thinking that before with the question around me and morning installation and the sticks, and why so many more sticks than the last iteration. But I mean, the ceilings are so gigantic in these spaces that, you know, it could hold them, and so many of the works. The other thing I love is that kind of, it's a bit of a signature for you, Maree, but the black walls of the gallery, which I heard Charlotte Day giving a talk a little while ago, where she kind of casually said, "There's nothing neutral about a white wall." And it's so true, and I really love that. You know, become a bit of a signature for you, but it just totally transforms that gallery.
And it's about creating an experience for people. And if you had a white wall with all of those works, it wouldn't have the same feel and atmosphere when you walk in there. Like I walked in there first time the day before it was open to the public, and I sobbed my heart out for 10 minutes before I could move past that first room. And that's me, the artist, moving me to tears. But then of course that's sort of over 30 years of my career and memories and making and creating in this one space. It's pretty incredible.
I still think that is clearly communicated even via the virtual tour. The visitor still manages to sort of capture the sort of the visceral aspects of the exhibition itself. Maree, so I can understand the sort of the emotional sort of response after seeing your artistic practice set out within these gallery walls that span over 3 decades. So fantastic. Thank you to you both. I would like to now sort of conclude today's proceedings and thank everybody for attending. There are still a number of questions that we've not been able to work our way through, and I apologise for that, and thank you for them. Maree, thank you for your generosity of knowledge and in sharing your art and cultural practices with our audiences today. We're immensely grateful to you. I appreciate it's also difficult to distill more than 3 decades of your artistic practice within a short 40-minute presentation, but you've given us a fabulous sort of insight, and I think many of our guests today have recognised that and acknowledged that, so thank you. And to also Miles and his colleagues at the National Gallery of Victoria, who continue to lead the way with these significant exhibitions around Aboriginal art and culture. And Maree Clarke Ancestral Memories exhibition is an important milestone, as Miles alluded to at the beginning in his introduction. Maree is the first living artist to exhibit at the NGV with ancestral ties to the country on which the gallery stands. So a significant milestone. The acquisition that Miles also noted of Maree's possum skin cloak is also an important step forward, I think, for audiences to continue to have access to those works. I would encourage everyone, I think everyone is encouraged after all the comments and the feedback, to please visit also the NGV website. The virtual tour, as I've mentioned, is tremendous, and to attend in person when it is safe to do so. As noted, the exhibition has been extended from its original date in October to now the 6th of February in 2022, and we'll all have the opportunity to visit in person. So thank you. I now have the pleasure in welcoming Anthony de Young, the founding board member and president of the Duldig Studio Board, who will formally conclude today's lecture. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Georgina, and welcome everyone. We've been very privileged today to listen to a fantastic lecture from Maree. Maree, thank you for taking us through your 30 years of creative history and such a fantastic creative journey. It's not often that you get the chance to hear your own mantra as an organisation relayed in the story that someone provides to you. We're all about inspiring creative journeys at the Duldig Studio. And today we've been really privileged to listen to your journey, starting with the jewellery in the 1980s right through to the public art commissions, the books, some of the more recent things that you've been involved in. Usually with these lectures, which have been going now for 35 years, and this is the 30th actually, 30th Annual Duldig Lecture, I usually like to draw on a couple of things for our audience, and the things that struck me today that I hope everyone take away are these. Firstly, it's Maree's important and pivotal role in reclaiming the cultural practices of Southeast Australia, often overlooked when we talk about Indigenous art, and the comment you made right at the start about uniting country, culture, place and family. And I think those 4 elements are absolutely critical and very, very much resonate with what we want to take out of today. I also wanted to draw on the other thing that I'm going to remember, and that's whenever I'm asked the Trivial Pursuit question about who has the largest collection of photos of skeletal remains, I now know the answer to that. It's Maree Clarke. And I would be very interested to see what some of those photos actually have. Given some of the numbers of teeth and pelts and the size of some of those artefacts that have been created from those animals, it's just amazing to think about how much work goes into it. And that's the part that I also want people to take out, as the alignment of process and products. That was another thing that stood out to me, is that there's so much goes into the creation of the works. The other things that I really sort of felt were very striking today was the way that traditional themes were united with changing mediums. So you take a theme like the kangaroo tooth, and through the use of new products, new elements, the glass, the gold, new presentation, we can really appreciate how that's been rediscovered and brought forward to the 21st century. Similarly, with some of the projects around the possum skin cloaks being reintroduced after 200 years, virtually rediscovering history and recreating, that's really striking. And, the way that some of the ancient items are presented concurrently with the newer items in the exhibition look really, look like something that make those things very, very important. And I can't wait to go and see the exhibition live. I know you get a bit of, you get a bit of a snip when you see things online, and it's always encouraging to be able to see things online. And we're making the best of the current environment we have. But when you do see things live, you can feel the space. And that's actually something that also resonates. So thank you very much, Maree, for such an excellent and engaging presentation. I hope that we can meet live at some point with you in the future to go through the exhibition and to see it live. I think that's a reflection of everyone on this Zoom call. I'd also like to thank all the other people who've been involved in the lecture today. So moving on to Miles Russell Cook, Acting Senior Curator of Indigenous Art at the National Gallery of Victoria. Your introduction was excellent in helping to understand the context of the new exhibition and the connection between the NGV and the Duldig Lecture on Sculpture goes back right to its initiation 35 years ago. It's a very important connection, and the NGV continues to show the way. This is the second year that the lecture's actually been delivered online. It has reached audiences in regional Victoria, interstate and international, as well as those who can attend in person. But thank you for your contribution today, Miles. I'd like to thank the City of Stonington. Their support of the Duldig Studio in the community and for public events like this have been very important, and they're a key partner of ours at the museum. I'd like to thank Vivian Anderson and the Vivian Anderson Gallery. Vivian's support over the last few weeks and her enthusiastic response from the very beginning of this concept, the approval and access to the images that Maree used and those on display at the NGV has all been arranged through Vivian, and we appreciate her support in the promotion of this event. I'd also like to thank the University of Melbourne in particular. I'd like to call out Dr. I'll try and get it right. Our very important Duldig board member and the research fellow at the School of Culture and Communication, Faculty of Arts, and her contribution to this event in particular. She's really picked up the reins on this event and done a fantastic job working with the team I'll call out in a moment. But the University of Melbourne have picked up where the NGV left off back in 2015, and since 2016 have run the Duldig Lecture in partnership with the Duldig Studio, and this is another example of that, and it's been a fantastic event. Lots of work goes on behind the scenes, and I'd also like to call out the team who've been involved in all of that this year. That includes Matt Siddle and Max Hayward, Gina Panabianco, the Vice President of the studio, and Janine Kibble, one of our fellow board members. Thank you all for your contributions to marketing, promoting, the technical support and the other activities behind the event. I'm also going to thank the founder and patron of the studio, Eva de Jong Duldig, my mother. Her work and commitment to this museum and ensuring that we have a history that continues to inspire creative journeys is absolutely central. It's all about bringing the stories of her parents, Karl and Slawa Duldig, their art, the wider Duldig family story and how it came to Australia, and what it has been able to do for the community in terms of education and history and culture to life, and we continue to benefit from that remarkable contribution. Finally, I want to thank everyone who's attended today, to everyone who attended and donated, and anyone who supports, is a member or a friend of the Duldig Studio, and I know a lot of you are on this Zoom call. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to continue to deliver these types of events, and we wouldn't be able to run the incredibly engaging programs that we do with the community. So it is through your support, your commitment, your contribution, your attendance that we can continue to be involved and attract such high quality people to our endeavours. and share the knowledge and the stories like those that we've been privileged to hear today. So thank you very much. I hope that you continue to support us. For those that are new, please go to the website, duldig.org.au. You can find out more. You can Google Duldig Studio, you can Google Maree Clarke, you can Google the NGV, and more about all the things we talked about today. And I hope that that is something that brings some health and happiness to you during a period where a lot of those in Victoria still have a fair bit of lockdown to go by the sound of things today. It's a very important aspect of the role of sculpture in the culture and the lives of communities across the globe and in Australia that we continue to run this event for, and that we continue to run the museum for. I hope you all have had a fantastic afternoon. Thank you for your involvement, and please continue to support us in the past and in the present and in the future. Thank you, Maree. Thank you, everyone, for today, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon, hopefully live at some point in the future. Thank you.